Thank you, Chairman Gowdy. Good to see you, my friend. A couple questions here for you. Have you individually met with any of the whistleblowers who testified before the Committee on Retaliation at TSA in 2016?
I don't have the list of those that testify, but I have individually met with whistleblowers. In fact, it was at my initiative that we have those meetings. And so I met with several whistleblowers several months ago just to have a dialogue with them, see how they were doing, what their experience was, so that I could, to the extent—
What was their experience?
Their experience was one of great frustration, as I completely empathize with. I mean, they thought they were offering up good ideas, and they got stymied by the organization almost every step of the way.
But not retaliated against?
Well, the folks that I talk to, I think in every conversation there's always a feeling of some level of retaliation. And what I want to make sure we do is that not only do we not retaliate, I don't think that's enough, personally. I think we should welcome different perspectives and importantly, give our employees feedback as to what we think, because not every idea is something that we can implement, but to have that dialogue.
I'm from the private sector, and culture in companies is important. It tells you a lot.
Right.
What's the culture at TSA?
The culture is something I am totally focused on. In fact, when I publish the strategy, when I publish the administrator's intent, if you read those, it's a guidance to the culture that I want to develop within TSA, and based on input I've received from a lot of people.
What is that culture? What are you trying to develop?
I'm trying to develop a culture where we all work together, where we support each other, where different points of view are respected, and we lift each other up and we care for our people. And I want a culture where people look at their employment in TSA and say, hey, I can't wait to get to work today.
And that culture starts at the top.
It does.
What do you personally do to make sure that culture starts at the top?
Yes, sir. What I personally do is, one, I talk about it a lot, and every time I visit TSA men and women almost every single week, sometimes multiple times a week. In fact, I've just gotten back from like a 2.5-week trip throughout TSA, and I want to have that engagement with our employees so I can reinforce those messages, and also, very importantly, get a sense for how it's going out there. And when I meet with employees, I don't just meet with them in a big group. I walk around the checkpoint and I talk with people person to person, because it's only during those encounters, really, that you're going to get some feedback that's of particular value. And so I want to ensure that I don't lose touch with the workforce, and I also want the workforce to know that I work for them. You know, my job is to make sure that they have
servant leadership. Yes,
absolutely. That they have the tools and the direction and the support, and importantly, when something happens that lands a transportation security officer or a federal air marshal in the news, if they followed our procedures, I need to be right behind them and be out in front, and we have done that. So, I think that's a very strong message, and that's certainly what I'll continue. I've done it for, this has been the way I've worked for 40 years.
How would you say the morale is?
I would say the morale actually is not what the public perceives it is. If you read reports and things like that, you think, wow, the morale must be really terrible. I don't see it as being really terrible. I think we can make some improvements, and I think that we just need to have a concerted leadership effort to do that. But I also—
Why is the perception not good then?
Because in a lot of ways, I'll give you an example. On the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey, yes, we score more towards the bottom than on the top, but it's important that everybody recognize we're improving. And in fact, if you look just inside the DHS components, we're actually improving quite well compared to our other DHS partners. And we all want to move as far forward as we possibly can. But the story that doesn't get out is the positive things that are going on. And that's a large part of what I try to do.
Get that story out.
Absolutely.
Get it out.
Yes.
Are you trying to do that?
I am. In fact, in my
perception,
right.
In Marketing 101,
right.
Perception is reality.
Yes. Right. And so every chance I get, I speak to that. I did it today in the opening statement. Every chance I get to address the media, and I do that often. I talk about the quality of the workforce that we have. Every chance I get when I see an employee did something particularly good, I personally call them and tell them, because that telegraphs throughout the organization. And as you know, sir, from your private sector experience, once you turn the corner and things start to move in the right direction, it tends to multiply going forward. And that's really what I hope happens over the next several years.
I agree with that. And also, I'll just end with, again, it starts at the top with you and your leadership team. And you would agree with that, correct?
Totally agree with that. Yes, sir. Thank you.
I yield back, Mr. Chairman.